Hidden within the heart of Africa lies a forgotten city. This was Great Zimbabwe, a lost civilization, a lost city in the heart of Africa. Who built these massive stone walls? A center of global trade. Discover the human stories.
UNESCO dates Great Zimbabwe from 1100. It was a major Shona civilization. Coins from Kilwa show vast trade networks. Chinese and Persian goods were found here. UNESCO also says the population exceeded 10,000 in the 14th century, and that the city was abandoned around 1450.
An ancient empire lost to time.
Imagine standing in the middle of an ancient African city. A city that once controlled wealth, trade, and political power across a vast region of southern Africa. But here is the mystery. For generations, outsiders looked at these enormous stone walls and refused to believe that Africans had built them. Some claimed the city, others connected it to ancient biblical legends. But archaeology eventually told a very different story. This was Great Zimbabwe. Because Great Zimbabwe was not simply a ruin, it was a capital, a trading hub connected to a world far beyond southern Africa. And for a time, it was one of the most important cities in the region. So how did an African civilization, who lived behind these walls? Where did their wealth come from? And perhaps the greatest question of all, why was this powerful city eventually abandoned? Tonight, we travel back nearly 1,000 years to a city that the world most forgot.
Pambai zvakanaka, tichasangana kumba.
Gaya bota, mwana anyerere. Gore rino tine zvirimwa zvakanaka.
Long before Great Zimbabwe became a monumental city, people were already living across the landscapes of southern Africa. They farmed, they raised cattle, they worked iron, they traded.
And they developed communities connected by family, agriculture, religion, and political authority. The region was not an empty wilderness waiting for civilization to arrive.
Then, sometime around the 11th century, something began to change. Communities grew, trade expanded. Political authority became more centralized. There were no concrete mixers, no cranes, no modern engineering equipment. The builders worked with granite blocks, and they learned something important about the stone. They did not need to
cover it with mortar. They could carefully arrange the blocks so that the walls held together through their own weight and structure. Generation after generation, the walls grew, and eventually,
founded in the 11th century by a Bantu-speaking population, Great Zimbabwe emerged. It's identified with the Shona tradition.
At its peak, this ancient urban center rivaled the greatest cities of the world, a testament to advanced African planning.
Our people have built a kingdom that will outlast the stars. True, but we must protect it.
monoliths of stone rise to define the sky. This is the great enclosure of the rising city. Cattle move through the settlement, and above everything, eventually producing three major areas known as the Great Enclosure as the Valley Ruins.
This was an entire urban landscape. The hill ruins occupied a massive granite outcrop. This was not a single building. UNESCO estimates that the site extends across hundreds of hectares. It describes the Great Enclosure as a major architectural achievement. The people who built Great Zimbabwe possessed organization. They possessed skilled craftsmanship, and they possessed a political system capable of coordinating enormous amounts of labor.
We just have to get used to this routine, don't we?
I suppose that's true. Time doesn't stop for us.
The walls tell us about power. The artifacts tell us about trade, but people tell us about civilization. Behind these walls were families, children, traders, leaders, and people whose names history has forgotten. Imagine a child growing up here. For that child, these enormous walls would not. If we looked at our history, these enormous walls would not be a mystery. They would simply have been home. The market would have been familiar. The smell of cooking fires, the sound of cattle would have been familiar. The landscape would have been home. And the city would have represented something much bigger than architecture. It represented belonging, identity, power, and perhaps most importantly,
Far beyond these walls, another story was beginning.
the weight is honest and true. It is good. We have a trade. Gold changed the story. The region surrounding Great Zimbabwe was connected to gold-producing areas, and gold was valuable in the medieval world. But gold alone does not create a civilization. You need systems, you need agriculture, political authority, skilled workers, and you need routes connecting producers to markets. Great Zimbabwe sat within a much larger network.
Its position helped connect the interior of southern Africa with trade routes leading toward the Indian Ocean. Because somewhere beyond the African interior, ships were crossing the ocean.
Merchants were moving goods between Africa, Arabia, Persia, and Asia, and the wealth of the interior was moving toward the coast. The people of Great Zimbabwe were not living at the edge of the world. They were participating in it. UNESCO reports evidence of imported beads, along with gold and Arab coins, demonstrating long-distance trade connections.
For centuries, the monsoon winds held the secrets of direct trade. Ships of wood and canvas braved the vast Indian Ocean.
This network connected vast cultures. Monsoons drove these legendary ships.
Chapter 5. The world comes to Africa. The Indian Ocean. For centuries, the monsoon winds connected vast and diverse cultures across the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean.
Picture the medieval Indian Ocean. Ships moved with the seasonal winds. Merchants crossed enormous distances. Goods changed hands again and again.
For centuries, the monsoon winds directly connected these distant shores. Massive wooden dhows mastered the turquoise waves, carrying silk,
Move toward the coast, travel across the ocean, and eventually reach another continent. The trade network was enormous, imported objects that could not have been produced locally.
Chinese porcelain and Persian goods, glass beads and coins. More than treasures, they are evidence of international commerce. Imagine holding this vessel in medieval southern Africa.
For the person who owned it, perhaps it was a symbol of wealth. Perhaps it was used in an elite household. Perhaps it was part of a political exchange.
We cannot know every story, but we know something extraordinary. Thousands of kilometers separated the manufacturers of these objects from the people who used them.
and somehow their worlds met here. अध्याय 6 दीवारों के पीछे की शक्ति। दृश्य 7 पहाड़ी।
At the top of the granite hill stood one of the most dramatic parts of Great Zimbabwe, the hill ruins. Some areas are elite or royal spaces. Others appear to have had ritual significance. This is where we must be careful. History is powerful, and among the most famous discoveries from Great Zimbabwe are the soapstone birds. History is powerful, but history also contains uncertainty. We know the walls existed. We know people lived here. We know the site was a powerful state. We know long-distance trade reached it. But we do not possess a complete written record explaining exactly what every building meant. That uncertainty does not make the story weaker. It makes the mystery more fascinating. 6 steatite birds were found in the hill ruins. They are evidence of the site's ritual significance.
Chapter 7 The Great Enclosure. This wall has stood for centuries, a testament to a lost empire. The Great Enclosure represents the zenith of Great Zimbabwe's architecture. Its massive walls were built entirely without mortar.
Then there is the Great Enclosure. This is the structure that stops people in their tracks. The wall curves through the landscape like a giant stone for modern decoration. The architecture itself creates the spectacle. The craftsmanship is precise. The scale is enormous. Every block depended on the arrangement around it.
One stone supporting another. Architecture communicates power. A massive wall tells visitors, someone organized this, someone controls this place.
Someone has the ability to command labor. Someone has resources, and someone wants you to see them. The walls of Great Zimbabwe were therefore not simply barriers, they were statements.
What did you find in there? Tell me the truth.
Some secrets are best left buried.
But then, something happened. The city began to decline, and this is where the story becomes complicated. There is no single dramatic scene recorded in history telling us exactly what happened. No surviving eyewitness says this was the day Great Zimbabwe ended. Instead, archaeology gives us clues. Around 1450, the capital was abandoned. Environmental pressures meant they couldn't supply food. Deforestation led to its abandonment. Great Zimbabwe did not necessarily collapse in one spectacular catastrophe. Civilizations can disappear slowly. A harvest becomes harder. Resources become more difficult to obtain. The population shifts. Trade patterns change. Political power moves. And one day, the streets become grassland. But the stones remain. This was due to food shortage and deforestation. This led to the rise of Kami.
No one expected the city to survive. But movement here never truly stopped. It just changed its rhythm. Now, it calls to those who dare to listen.
But perhaps we should be careful with the word disappeared, because the people did not simply vanish. After Great Zimbabwe declined, other centers became more important. One of them was Kami. The stone building tradition continued, political power shifted, trade continued, and the civilization evolved. The story therefore isn't simply Great Zimbabwe disappeared, it is Great Zimbabwe stopped being the center. That is very different. The people were not erased. Their descendants and cultural traditions, the city became a monument to an earlier period, and another chapter of its history would begin. UNESCO describes Kami as a later development. It emerged after the collapse of the Great Zimbabwe Kingdom.
This wasn't a battle, it was a massacre.
This cannot be of local origin.
And yet there is no mortar holding it together.
Centuries passed. Then outsiders began paying greater attention to the ruins, and something deeply revealing happened. Some outsiders asked, who really built this?